stopping by. If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kathy, and my goal is to thrive and not just survive when life throws curveballs at me. And if that's your goal too, then you're in the right place. In today's video, I'm going to be making some sandwich bread. One of my goals this year is to make more items at home that I would normally buy in the store. And one of those things in particular is bread. I wrote down a list of a few things that I could think of why I want to be making bread at home. And these are not in any particular order. It was just the order of when I thought of them. One is because when you make bread at home, you get to control the ingredients. So there aren't any added stabilizers and things like that the commercially made bread companies add in so that they can be shelf stable for longer. Another reason is I want to be able to learn the skill before I need it. The last thing I want to do is if there's a run on the grocery stores, or there's, for whatever reason, I'm not able to go to the store and buy a loaf of bread, that's not the time I want to be learning how to make bread. Because as you're learning, you're going to have trial and error, and until you develop that skill, there's going to be waste. And I want to be able to replenish my supply while the supplies are still available. Another reason is so that I can be cycling through my preps. I store flour, I store yeast, and if I'm not using those items, then they're just going to go bad. And when it's time for me to actually need to use them, I'm not guaranteed that they're going to be viable to use. So if I'm using them now and replacing them as my supply gets lower, then I know that it's a fresh stock that I'm pulling from. And another reason is by making my bread myself, then I know how much flour I'm going through. I know how much yeast I'm going through. So then I know how much I actually need to stock. Because if I'm just stocking thinking, oh, I need X number of pounds of flour to get me through 6 months, well, if I'm making my own bread and other things from that, like pizza doughs and things like that, that 50 pounds may not go as far as I think it's going to go. So this will give me a better gauge at how much I need to actually stock in order to supply my family with what we need on a weekly and daily basis. The recipe I'm following today is out of the America's Test Kitchen Bread Illustrated book. And that's this here. It is American sandwich bread. It's just going to make one loaf of bread. I did do something a little bit different than what the recipe says, and I'll point that out as I'm going through. But let's go ahead and get started here. In this measuring cup, I have 3/4 of a cup of whole milk at room temperature and 2 tablespoons of butter melted. In this cup here, I have 3/4 of a cup of water and 2 tablespoons of honey and 2 teaspoons of yeast. So what I did here is I took my water, I heated it up in the microwave for 15 seconds. When I pulled it out, it was a little too hot for me to be able to put the yeast in, but it was the perfect temperature for me to be able to melt my honey. So I went ahead and put the honey in, got the honey dissolved, and once that was done, the water was the right temperature to be able to add my yeast. And to know if the temperature is correct or not, you just want it to be warm, like baby bath water warm. So if you can put your finger in and it feels warm but not hot, then you're good. I did put the yeast in. The recipe doesn't say to do this step. I wanted to do this step because the yeast I was using had an expiration date of, I think it was June or April 2020, and I wanted to make sure that the yeast was going to be viable before I put it into my recipe. The yeast packets that I'm using the yeast from, I did store those in my refrigerator, so it's not like they've just been in the cupboard for the last few years. So it was stored, I guess, in a way that it was going to, maintain its viability. So that's what I'm using there. I will be using 2.5 cups of flour. It calls for bread flour, but I don't have bread flour. I'm going to use all-purpose flour, and I'll adjust how much flour I use depending on how the recipe's coming out. And then I'll do 1.5 teaspoons of salt, and that's it. So let's get this going. Please do me a favor, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I really appreciate you doing that. Now let's get back to the video. So the recipe says to first mix the flour and the salt together. Actually, it says to mix the flour, salt, and yeast together in the bowl. I'm going to go ahead and mix the flour and the salt together. And it calls for, like I said, 2.5 cups. So I'm going to put those in my mixer. Okay, and then for the salt, we need 1.5 teaspoons, I believe. Yep. So there's 1. Or that's a half, and then 1.5. I'm just going to give this a mix. Okay. Now that that's stirred together, I'm going to put the mixer on low, and then I'm going to start adding my liquid. For this step, I'm just going to go ahead and manually mix it just till I get the shaggy dough, and then I'll use the dough hook for the kneading part. So I'll just get this mixed up, try to get that incorporated a little bit faster. So what I have here is, in the bowl now is a shaggy dough. You can see how it's mixed up, but it's still pretty sticky and shaggy looking. So now I'm going to put it back into the mixer, and I'm going to let that dough hook do its thing and see if we can't get that mixed into a ball. Can you see how the dough has it's sucked up all of, or absorbed up all of the liquid, yet it's still very sticky and isn't forming into a ball? At this point, I'm going to go ahead and start adding a little bit more flour, a little at a time, until I see that it's forming that ball and it's pulling up completely from the sides of the bowl. So now, as you can see, the dough has it's pulling completely clean away from the sides and the bottom of the bowl. A couple of things that will impact the amount of flour that you need to add while making bread is the humidity and temperature and just the environment in your kitchen itself. So just because a recipe says to use, like this one said, 2.5 cups of flour, it was definitely not enough flour for this recipe. So just be aware of that when you're making bread. You do need to adjust the amount of flour depending on how the environment is in your kitchen on any given day or on the day that you're making your bread. So now that this has a ball formed, but it is pulling clean away, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the mixer, and I'm going to let the mixer knead the bread for about 10 minutes. Okay, this has been kneading for about 10 minutes. It's still just a little sticky, but we're going to knead it on the board here with some flour, so that should take care of that. Some flour in it. So all I'm doing here is pushing it out, rotating it, folding it in half, and pushing it out again, just to work the dough. Supposedly, it's supposed to start feeling nice and silky and soft. And that it is. It's starting to get a very nice soft texture to it. So the last time I made this recipe, the bread did not turn out very well. And I don't know if it's probably because the yeast packet I was using was expired and no longer viable. This time I made sure I bloomed it first to make sure it was going to work. It's the last loaf of bread. We still ate it. I still have a little bit of it left. When this one's done, I'll show you the difference. Hopefully I'll be able to compare how much rice I got out of my last loaf compared to this one. I'm hoping this one turns out well. You know, I watch a lot of videos on YouTube on how to make bread. And I wish that, and YouTube's great for getting ideas and having, a concept of how it's supposed to look and how it's supposed to feel and how it's supposed to work, But unless you really just get your hands in and do it, there's really no way of knowing for yourself how it's supposed to be. I wish I could be an expert just by watching videos. I'd be an expert on a lot of things if that were the case. But since that is not the case, the only way to really learn and get that skill perfected is by doing. Not just watch the video on how to do it, but to actually do it, Okay, this is starting to feel better. Okay. Well, I think I've worked it enough. So now I think it's time to let it rest and rise. So what I have here is a large bowl. I'm just going to use a little bit of olive oil just to oil the inside of the bowl so the dough doesn't stick. Get that all incorporated around. Okay, put the dough seam side down. in the bowl. I'm going to cover it with a piece of plastic wrap. I know some videos I've watched, they cover it with a towel. The book that I'm following says to do plastic wrap, so that's what I'm doing today. I'll do the plastic wrap. Now I'm going to set this somewhere warm and let the dough rise until it's doubled in size. Okay, this has risen for about an hour and a half. As you can see, it's doubled in size. I think this is kind of funny with it said to put the plastic wrap on tightly, which I did, and as you see, it is, I don't know if you can see that very well, but it's domed over the top, and it's definitely tight. So now what we're going to do is pull this out of the bowl, and we are going to deflate it by pushing into it. And we're going to pull it out of the bowl and put it on our floured surface. It's just lightly floured. And I'm going to press it out into a rectangle about the size kind of my pan. Now what I'm going to do is start at this end, and I'm going to roll the dough from one end to the other, tucking in my rolls. Hopefully those are going to get, and then seal up the seam, tuck in the sides. And then the pan's lightly greased. And I'm going to just loosely cover this and let it rise until it's an inch above the edge of the pan, and then I'll get it baked up. Okay, so my bread is finished rising. As you can see, it's a little bit more than an inch, so we'll see how this turns out. I think I let it rise a little bit too much, and it's definitely lopsided or bumpy because I didn't have my roll real nice and tight. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get this in the oven, and I'm sure it's going to taste delicious either way. So I'll bring you back once we're done. Okay, well, our loaf has finished baking. And remember what I said about you're not going to get good at doing it until you get some practice? Well, there's proof right here of that. As you can tell, it is a bit lopsided. It definitely rose more than what I should have let it, but I got busy doing something else and forgot about it, and it rose way faster than I was expecting. The book said 1 to 1.5 hours, and it was less than an hour, and it was overflowing. So now I know to watch it a little more carefully next time. Let's go ahead and get this out of here. That looks beautiful. It's nice and golden brown. Now I am going to let this cool a bit before I slice into it. Okay, let's cut this open and give it a taste. Well, the crumb turned out very nice. I was afraid it was going to have a lot of big air pockets in it since it rose too much. Nice and soft. Probably isn't as firm as you'd want it for a sandwich bread. But again, it did rise too much. Give this a little taste. That turned out very good. Not bad for my second attempt at making this bread. And hopefully next time is even better. So the loaf of bread, or the partial loaf that's on the left, was my first attempt at this recipe. And as you can see, I got hardly any rise out of that batch at all. So not enough the first time, too much the second time. So third time's a charm. At least I hope so. I hope you liked today's video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified each time I put out a new video. Well, until next time, I hope you have an amazing day, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye now.